Hi, I'm Lieutenant Brian with the State Patrol. I want to thank you and the carriers and districts today for attending the training in this platform. Unfortunately, we are unable to meet all of your meetings in person this year. Today we're going to cover crash and emergency preparedness. A lot of what you'll see in the video we're about to play is related towards carriers' roles or district roles. But as drivers, I want you to keep in mind things you can do in a crash or emergency to assist them. And it's also beneficial to know what they're expecting and doing, as well as what law enforcement and EMS are expecting at a crash scene as well. We feel that if you have a plan in place prior to an emergency happening, you will be able to more adequately and quickly assess and address the situation. Thanks.
Okay, Unit 3. First of all, good morning. Thanks for showing up. We've got a lot to go through. We're gonna whiz through this pretty quick. You won't be able to write everything down I have, but there will be a lot of things on here that you should write down if you have specific questions about statutes, stuff like that. We will have noted them up on the slide. Some of these slides get very, very busy, and I understand that, but we're going to hit the highlights in the slides, okay? Again, I'm Sergeant Kelly Johnson, and I cover northern Minnesota, and for the Office of Pupil Safety or Transportation Safety. So my lieutenant you've met, Lieutenant Brian Rue. Chad Doffenbach is back there. He's my counterpart in the south, and our lovely wristbands for our Metro partner who took the head-on crash. So we wish him well. Got a couple icebreakers here to start out with.
It's time once again for these emergency drills, but this time around I'm going to do it with thrills. The number one thing is that you don't want to freak. You want to listen up carefully and you don't want to speak. We got 5, count 'em, 5 ways to exit this bus. Leave your things on the seat, leave without any fuss. We got 2 doors on the roof, 2 doors on the side, a window in the back, and none that have slides. So the first step you take might be a long way down. Land on your feet and you will be on the ground. We need 2 at the door with your hands in the air to help all the guys and you ladies so fair. Once you leave this bad bus, you need to move far away. 50 feet should do, and there you should stay. You ones in the front are going to have some more time before the kids in the aisle will be out of the line. Brake needs to be set so the bus doesn't move. Just give it a tug. It comes gently and smooth. Just to be certain that the bus is secure, turn the key to the left, and then you'll be sure. The radio's on and the microphone's here. Just press on this button and speak plain and clear. Tell them Route 8 is down, tell them right where we are. And in no time at all, you will see the aid car. Extinguishers here if you should see some flame. First aid kit is here if someone should be maimed. Your driver's unconscious and stuck in his seat. Time to get yourself moving and beat your little feet. The belt cutter is here, kept right by my side. Cut the belt from my body and drag me outside. That's pretty much all that you kids need to know. Pretend we just crashed. Now get up and go.
This is our agenda today. Quite a bit to cover. We'll start out with crazy comments of the year. We heard this from a driver up in the northwest section part of the state. That is a quote directly from the driver right to me, and I calmly asked him to please repeat what he just said because I couldn't believe it. Right? We have drivers like this out there, don't we? Okay? I'm speaking mostly today to transportation directors, although some of the slides will be geared towards your drivers as well. These are the people that we don't want driving bus, right? These are the people that are dangerous. It's your job to find them and either fix their behavior or fire them, right? Easier said up here than done, I got it. But this is bad news. We have to do what's right for the children. So we wanted to throw a little teeth into this Unit 3 here with some statutes. 1694511. Okay, talks about accident and subsequent operations. We're going to dig into this like crazy, so don't be scrambling with this one. What I did bold for you, I want you to concentrate on hook, hearse, or nurse. Hook, hearse, or nurse. Okay, that's an easy way to remember it. Hook, hearse, or nurse. You'll be quizzed on that one later. Okay, statutes continued, 123B, point 91. What does that tell us? The second bullet there. And I know you can't read this in the back, so don't worry about it. I understand that. But I bolded the second bullet that says each district shall develop and implement a comprehensive written policy governing pupil transportation safety. Okay? So if you're here and you're looking at me right now wondering where your policy is, or if you have one, or if you need one, the answer is yes. You shall have one by statute. Most of you have one, but probably can improve on one, right? That's why we're here. There's a rule even that covers it. In case of accident, 7470.1000 sub 4. I like this one because if you look at the last part of that first paragraph, it says, but shall send 2 of the patrol or other responsible pupils to the nearest house to summon help. Right? So this was written last year, obviously, right? Yeah. I have yet to hear about a school bus crash where they had to send someone to the nearest house to summons help. Maybe it's happened. Where's my director from Indus, Soren? Yeah, there he is. He probably needs to do that. He probably hits the Canadian cell phone waves and it just don't work down here or something, right? He's literally a river away. But yeah, so that just says, that's an option obviously, but what do? Call on the radio, call for help. Okay, makes sense? We won't spend a lot of time on these. Remind your drivers about the Good Samaritan law, okay? Everyone gets so freaked out. I heard it earlier today that, when you come talk to my drivers, they're like, all this responsibility, it's just not worth the money that we're getting, right? Which is true. I mean, because when the State Patrol comes in, we kind of hound on the driver responsibilities and we hound the drivers hard about making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But don't forget to remind them, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you're doing what you're trained to do, okay, you're also covered by the Good Samaritan law. Okay, and we all know what that is, right? But that is a statute, just so you know, they're up there, 604A01 or 604A015. You can write that down if you want to cover it more. But again, if you're doing the right thing, what you know to be right and what you feel is best for the situation, okay, you're not going to be civilly or criminally charged, most likely. You guys recognize that bus right there? It's Mr. Paul Davis, retired trooper. And this was not last night, by the way. This was his first bus. Yeah, there's... What's funny is that's not what even wrecked the first bus, is it, Paul? And last night, if you missed the Ogilvy races, you missed a heck of a good time. It was great. It was fun. And Paul tipped another bus. And it wasn't this one. He already broke that one. And I believe, who's this? Tim Herstead and Josh from Crosby in that bus recording that. So they love this. This is fun. We had a great time last night. The biggest crowd cheers were when our school buses were out there racing and pitting each other and bumping each other. It was a phenomenal time. Hopefully that's a sustain for next year. Okay, let's get into this. Wow, where do you start? Let me see. Is Greg Liedel in here? How about the other Greg from Grand Rapids? Oh, I think they're in meetings. If your name is Greg and you're a transportation director, good luck to you. That's all I got to say. Okay? Because the two crashes that I'm going to talk about a lot happened to Greg and Greg. All right? To their departments. So, but if this happens, where do you start? Let's talk about that. Scene arrival. Remain calm. Scene survey. This is basic stuff, basic 101 stuff, right? Do people forget this stuff at scenes? Yeah, you have to have this through your mind already many, many times so you understand that this might be an issue at your scene, and you got to be the leader. You got to be the one in charge there. If you get there, right, is evacuation necessary? This is something you need to talk to your bus drivers about, right? When would evacuations be necessary? Just shout them out. Fire, water, fuel, other traffic. There you go. Absolutely. You're on a corner. We need to get those kids out of the way, right? So they don't get hit again. Your policy may not say call 911 first. So go by your policy or set your policy. We, being from the law enforcement side of the house, like to hear call 911 first. Especially if it's anything except just a very, very minor crash, right? Why? Because we can get emergency services headed that way right away. You as the transportation director, I know you think you want to be the first notified about absolutely everything. I got it. But are you going to be able to help in that situation? If it's a moderate to nasty crash. Are you? No. You're not. And neither am I, right? My first aid bag might be. But remember, we got to get the people rolling to the scene that can help the most people at the here and the now, right? So that's why we say notify 911 first. What should you tell 911? Just a couple things there. Just the basics of what happened in the crash, right? You don't have to spend all day, but 911 is going to want to know where you're at, what happened, how many injured, etc., etc. Because they want to know what they should get rolling towards the scene. What resources do you need, right? If the bus has just slid into the ditch, that's fine. If the bus is on its side in the middle of an intersection, now it's a bigger deal, right? If it's about to tip over into a lake, that's even a bigger deal. So that's what they're going to be asking you. I always say react, right? That sounds so simple, but have you ever seen anybody in a shock situation where they just freeze? Okay, I've seen it. It's kind of a scary thing. Explain to your bus drivers that please don't do that. You have to do something, right? And this is where your planning and your training, this training amongst other trainings, will help you out, right? Because you know what people do when they're in shock and they don't know what to do next? Freeze. But what does that look like on scene? Pacing, right? Oh my God, I got to do this. Oh, wait, this comes first. Yeah, oh, did I call it? Yeah. Oh, wait. That's what that looks like, right? What that is wasted time, okay? So that's why we train. Okay, should your driver move the bus to a place of safety? Depends, right? If it's a minor crash, can we try to get the bus off the road? Can we get the bus into an approach? Can we get the bus in the next county road? Yeah. If it's a major crash where we have possible fatalities and we're going to have helicopters landing and it's crazy, insane, should we worry about moving that bus? No. If we don't move the bus and we're in the traffic lane, now what's our next biggest threat? Other traffic, right? Cones, if we've got them, right? I don't think I've been to a bus crash or accident yet where I've seen cones placed out by the driver. And I'm okay with that. Luckily, most of the time there's law enforcement that will get there with their lights. So don't worry about the cones if there's other stuff to triage to worry about, right? But you have to understand that. If you're in the middle of a corner, a highway, an intersection, fast-moving vehicles, you don't want to kick the kids outside, right? The safest place they can be in an accident, unless you need to evacuate, is inside that bus sitting down, right? Seat to seat, back to back. Basics. First aid when necessary. We talk about, as a bus driver, what do you do when the crash initially happens? Besides say, oh, 911, get on my radio, I've been involved in a crash, I'm going to need another bus, please hurry. I've got injured students, right? And then what do we do? Triage. Somebody can explain triage to me. Yes?
Worse injuries that actually are treatable get treated first, leading to
Okay, yeah. What she said in a nutshell is trying to figure out who needs the fastest help, right? Can your driver do that? Yeah, yeah. Can your driver do that by moving the kids that are walking wounded to a certain part of the bus or a certain part of the ditch? And then the kids who can't move are immobile, they can stay right there in their spot, right? And then can you get other kids to maybe help you out in moving people if you have to, right? If it becomes an evacuation issue, are you going to, as a bus driver, are you going to be able to load up all them wounded people that need help getting off the bus? No, but you got to ask for help, right? Your students will help you out. In the, I'll talk about the Bemidji bus crash. I think within, I want to say 45 seconds, there were multiple adults on scene, people that had stopped and come and help and start getting people off the bus and stuff like that. So hopefully, if that happens, you're in a case like that where there'd be multiple people to help. But if not, we get the most wounded care first, right? And I say that your bus driver needs to pay attention to that, because when medical shows up, ambulance, right? You need to be that point of contact as that bus driver. This is what I've got. I've got people here. I think they're the worst. This is my second group of people over here. They're broken arms, broken legs, but they're okay. And this is my uninjured here. Let them know that so they can zoom in right on the kids that need help. Continue to reassess. Absolutely. That's a reminder to talk to you about reassessing yourself too, right, as the driver. I feel like I've talked about this whole year, so I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over, but most of you probably haven't heard it. As the driver, or as an adult chaperone, and you're involved in a crash, do you think you're going to have a little bit of shock going on? You think you're going to have a little shot of adrenaline going on? Yeah, to the point where you're probably not going to feel much pain, right? You know, most people that are shot, like in a war zone or gunfight, they don't even realize they've been shot. That's a mass amounts of adrenaline. That's a good thing for the human body, right? That can happen to you too, but you have to reassess yourself. The last crash up by Bagley was a northern school district. Bus crashed in the large median. I was talking to that director on scene. I mean, within 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, we had everyone going to different hospitals, different clinics, and the bus driver was there. The adult chaperone was there. We were talking to him. Well, I didn't realize until the next day that he ended up going to the hospital too. He looked just fine on scene. But I think after everything wore off, he's like, oh man, something's going on, right? So when we say reassess yourself too, if you happen to be on scene or you happen to be in the bus. Don't make the assumption that a tight chest is, well, that's just from the seatbelt from the crash, or I must have hit the steering wheel, right? Or something happened where, oh, I just don't feel right. I'm just going to go home and I need a break. I need a drink and I need a break, right? No, it's not the time to do that. Go get assessed, because you have no idea what's going on inside. We talk about, especially, most of our drivers, I think I can say this, we're elderly, right? I mean, most of our bus drivers aren't in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, are they? 50s, 60s, 70s, right? We've seen it many times. We've got elderly people involved in a crash. They're up walking around. We take care of the crash. Everyone goes their own way. And within a half an hour, get a call. Yeah, so-and-so, Mr. Jones, he's passed away. What? What do you mean he's passed away? He was up walking around. Yep. He's gone. All right? What happened? What's that? Heart attack, maybe. Yeah, post-trauma. He lost blood. He was losing blood, right? He thought it was that seatbelt. He thought it was just chest pain from the crash, right? What he had actually done was torn a little bit of artery, right? Or a vein or something in his chest or something, and he just slowly bled to death. Okay? So that what I'm getting at is that stuff happens. So when you reassess, make sure you're like, oh, I'm feeling good, right? Keep checking yourself. Okay, if you have to leave the bus, and there are some cases where you might have to, please leave somebody responsible in charge, right? That's all I can tell you. I don't have the answer for every situation, but try to leave the most responsible person you can in charge. I want to talk about this because in the couple accidents that I've done post crashes on, some serious ones, I want you to understand as the school bus person that your needs are not the needs of the first responders, right? Your needs are not the needs of me when I show up as a trooper, right? So let's talk about first responder roles. Triage, okay? We already talked about that. That's what they're going to do first, right? Who needs to get on that bird that's going to be landing here in 10 minutes, right? Who needs to go to the ambulances? Do they care where they're going? No, they don't. Do you? Yeah, you better, right? Are they concerned with this? Minor scrapes and bruises? Do they care about the 13-year-old girl in there crying and, you know, getting on Facebook and live streaming it? No, right? We can worry about emotions later. They're not concerned with your accountability issues. We'll dive into that in a little bit, right? They don't care where the passengers end up. Do they want names and information? Yes, they do. How many of you have been at a serious crash? How many times were you asked for your name, your date of birth, your address, and your phone number? How many? 5, 6, I bet? At least, right? The police are going to ask you. The ambulance is going to ask you. The bus driver should be asking you. I mean, if you're not the bus driver, but then another department, law enforcement's going to ask you. I've seen it many, many times where these people are like, oh, they just took it 5 times over here. Yeah, well, give it to me because my report's different, right? And what I'm getting at here is everyone needs information for their own paperwork. Okay, what's law enforcement concerned with? Scene safety and scene preservation. Right? You care about the kids in the bus, I care about the scene and nobody else gets hurt, right? And I care that, are we looking at a minor crash, big crash? Are there going to be citations given out here? Is there going to be a civil lawsuit giving out here? That will make me determine who I get rolling towards that scene as a cop, right? Your role at the scene. Can I say accountability anymore? Right? This is huge and this is hard. It's easy to sit up here and say, but this is hard. Okay, you have to know where people went. You have to know where people were going, where they are going, who's in charge there, what's your point of contact, what clinic or hospital they're going to. Consider this, right? When you get that call, you're sitting in the office. The worst case scenario is you're out on a route, right? That's happened too. You're out on your route, you get a call, there's been a bad crash. Oh my, now what, right? Best case scenario, in this case, you're sitting at your desk bored. You get a call, there's a bad crash, okay? What are we thinking about right then and there? Where's the crash? How many injured? Who's involved? What else? What do I need to do, right? The panic kind of starts coming up. You're like, oh my, what? Again, training, right? Consider this. Yes?
So you say accountability, which I agree with, but so walk us through as far as how it's very chaotic at the accident scene and here, Sally went here.
Okay. The question is if you're on scene, how do you physically or how do you really get accountability? Do you want to know how I did it at the last scene? I got there and everything was chaotic. There's 4 different police departments. There's 2 different ambulances from 2 different towns. The helicopter's landing, right? You know what I did? And I can't do it because I have my mic on. I got in the middle of the crowd and whistled as loud as I could and said, everyone, give me a second. Shut up, right? Nobody leaves this scene without their name going through me. That's what I did, right? I'm comfortable with that because I carry a gun, right? So nobody's going to argue with me, right? I would submit that if you have a name tag, a jacket that says staff, transportation director, Greg Lido's pink hat, right? If you have something that designates you as a leader, right, you can do the exact same thing. In fact, there were many, that's one of those things where you do and scene, you're like, man, I'm probably going to get a lot of complaints about that, right? Because I just kind of went in and took over. And, well, guess what? The majority of the people called in to my lieutenant afterwards. This is really getting annoying. And you know what they said? We loved having Kelly there, and that was great what he did. Okay, what I'm getting at is if you can take charge at scene, be that focal person. Nobody leaves this scene without their name, and I need their full name, their date of birth, and where they're going. Everyone is like, oh, thank God, somebody's finally in charge, right? So be that person. Now, can you be that person and then submit that to somebody else when somebody else shows up, right? Like your driver submits control over to the transportation director? Yeah, and that's okay, that's great. But somebody's got to take control. Somebody's got to take charge because, believe it or not, the paramedics are doing their thing, firefighters, police, state patrol, they're all going to do their own thing, right? We had literally deputies asking 2 different groups of students, and then the troopers went and asked the 2 different, I mean, it was just chaotic. Nobody had a central focal point. So be that focal point. That's how that looks. Okay, I put that top bullet in there, whatever. That's the last issue. I mean, if you've been there for 2 or 3 hours and somebody says, oh, I really need, my backpack and it's got my homework that's due tomorrow, fine, you can go do that, but it's not a big worry. But you might want to consider this. Who's writing the crash? Before you leave the scene, is that state trooper writing the crash? Or is it that state trooper? Right? We're not all the same. The state trooper in the near Bagley crash, he wrote the crash. I showed up, took control of everything, but in the end, he's writing the crash. And then we have another trooper come in that does the recon, right? And that might be later that day, or that might be the next day. So kind of understand in your mind who you're dealing with, right? Because I kept getting calls. Hey, I need this report. I need that report. Is this done? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not writing the crash, okay? So find the lead agency, get a good number before you have to chase it down later. That's the point of that. When you do show up at a scene, which is a good reminder to talk about, you should have a big old pad of paper and a couple pencils or pens, right? You need to start taking notes. You need to start taking notes for yourself so you can pull this stuff up later and look at it and be like, oh yeah, there's Kelly Johnson, that's his phone number, okay, I'll call him later, right? We talked about is this a big crash? Is it a minor crash? How does my response differ? I'll leave that up to you guys. But it's going to differ. You know what I'm saying? Like Greg Lido, I don't know, many of you probably saw him last year. I think you talked about his crash. It's a bad day when you got two helicopters land at your school bus crash scene, right? That's going to differ than if someone rear ends your bus at 5th and 10th. Do you give a DOT test or a non-DOT test, right? It may be completely chaotic, right? So hook, hearse, or nurse happens. So we got, let's say we have all 3, right? Is your driver going to get a DOT test, drug and alcohol? Yeah. Always on a hearse, right? That means a fatality. Always going to get tested. Now, what happens if one of the vehicles just needs to be towed? Do they get a test? Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that. Hook, hearse, or nurse happens, plus a citation equals drug and alcohol test, right? Hook or nurse happens, right? So a tow or someone goes for care and no citation, can you still test that driver with a non-DOT? That's your policy, right? So don't look to us and don't look to the hospital. Does the hospital take blood tests on everyone that come in? Typically they do on a crash. But why are they taking that? It ain't for you. It ain't for law enforcement. They want to know what's on board. They want to know what they're dealing with, right? We may have access to that, but that's through subpoenas and warrants and all that stuff after the fact. So don't assume that just because you send a driver or someone to the ER that, oh, they're going to take a test. Not the test that you want. Okay, accountability. I think I mentioned that. Rides home, right? So Bagley crash, we had the driver this way. We had 8 students this way. We had several students in the opposite direction, right? So we had people everywhere. How do you as a transportation director figure this out? How are we getting them home? What a disaster, right? If you planned on making lunch or getting home early that day, good luck to you, right? If you're in one of these situations, what you're going to need is help, right? You're going to need to call in staff. Listen, I need you to get to this clinic. I've got at least 3 or 4 people heading that way. You need to go stand at this hospital. Put your vest on or your shirt or your ID that shows that you're with us, okay? So you're my focal point at that hospital. When parents start showing up at hospitals, they need someone to chat with and they need someone to know what's going on. You need to text me or call me if you have any questions, right? So again, you're being that focal hub, maybe on scene, maybe at your office, but you're directing people, right? Get them to certain places where they can be the most effective. And that means hospitals, clinics, staging areas, right? If there's a staging area, you as a director, you probably want to be there, right? Parental releases, right? Do we just allow a parent to show up on scene and take their child? Is that a good idea? Okay.
Do you have a choice?
Yeah, good question. Do you have a choice? If I show up on scene and my kid's in the crash, are you going to tell me no? Don't forget I carry a gun. Right. I'm telling you what, whether I got a gun on or not, you're not going to tell me no. That's the kind of parent I am. Because I'm going to bring my kid in or bring him home. Or, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to do my own assessment. So what should you do in a case where you meet a angry, pissed off mother bear who says, give me my kids? Document. Tell them, hey, Kelly Johnson, that's against our policy. I wish you would wait until they get checked out by the ambulance and they get signed off first. Please do that. No, I want my kids now. Okay, but I'm documenting this that you took your kids, right? Because if I'm kind of a sleazebag parent, all of a sudden I'm going to get my kid home, and that night I'm going to bring him into the ER, and we're going to make up a story, right? And that's going to come back out in court. Well, how come you didn't get they just let my kid go? They were on scene, I showed up, and the kid jumped in my car, and off I went. They didn't even check him out, right? But when you have documentation of what happened, that helps your case, right? Okay. Remember, accountability. This is basic stuff at any crash. But I want to hit on this one, this last one. Parents' information is correct, right? I would advise you that when you do your annual driver's checks for your school bus, whoever does that for you, or if you do it, go through your files and check parental information. Why? Yeah, it changes, right? People get divorced nowadays, like some people change clothes. Some people move, right? They're always moving. The kids are now with mom on the other side of town. Maybe they're with grandma. Whatever the scenario is, it gets a little crazy, right? That means your information isn't correct. I think Greg might have talked to you, if you remember last year, about kids actually having a wrong last name in their file. Through the divorce, the children's last names changed. Well, nobody told Bemidji about that. And that became an issue when it came to trying to treat people and find them in the hospitals. I'm looking for John Johnson. We don't have a John Johnson. What do you mean you don't have a John Johnson? You know what I'm saying? Because their name officially now in all the paperwork is John Jacobson. Okay, so that's the stuff you want to check. Post-crash, we kind of talked about this. Yes, one will be needed, hook, hearse, or nurse, plus citation, DOT, and we talked about the minor crashes. You can give a non-DOT per your policy. Make sure it's in your policy. The biggest thing I can tell you, directors, and even the drivers, is know your policy. It makes a big difference when you're wandering around scenes, going from clinic to clinic, going from clinic back to the staging area, and someone's asking you questions. Because you're going to be asked a lot of questions about your policy, about what to do with the driver. Reconstruction of the scene on serious crashes, this takes time. Don't call the next day and ask for the recon, right? Don't even call and ask for the written report, right? It ain't going to be done, I'm telling you that right now. So be patient, work with the the investigating agency, and say, hey, roughly give me a timeline when you think this stuff is going to be done and releasable to me, right? That's the first thing you can ask. Several days for just the report, because it's a full investigation, right? If it's bad enough, we got to go talk to a lot of different people. We got to write this down, we got to get it submitted, we got to get it approved by our lieutenants and captains and whoever else is involved. That's before you even see it. Okay. This doesn't help with your current issues that you're having at the school and with parents, right? Recommend you come up with a line like, hey, this is still an active investigation. Just hold on, we're working on it. And be in touch with the investigating agency. Will we show up and check your driver's files? Yes, we will either take them or copy those, right? Those are what go into the crash folder. That's what's going to go to court. Not the ones that you're catching up on the next day because you're like, oh man, I'm way behind, right? So keep up on this stuff. We won't spend a lot of time on what goes in your folder. That's pretty common sense. It's all on our website. But if you need help with that, we're around the rest of the week. This is my question to you. When you're gone, who has access to your files? Okay, are they in your office? Are they under lock and key that you own only? Or does one of your assistants, secretaries, whoever have access to that as well? Because as we know, most crashes are happening when you're on vacation on a Friday afternoon or evening, right? And we show up on Saturday and you're like, yeah, I've got the only key and I'm down here in, wherever, Florida Keys. Okay, so make sure somebody has access. Make sure we can get access to it and spend some time on upkeep of those files. Same thing with the video releases, same thing as the reports. You're not going to get stuff released tomorrow. It's just not going to happen. I strongly recommend that, and of course it's because of the data privacy, but I strongly recommend your district has a policy or you know that policy. Work with your HR department if you're big enough to have one. Do you have a spokesperson for the media or even for the parents, or are you that person? Typically it's your superintendents, it's your principals, sometimes it's you, right? Sometimes the superintendent is like, I'm not getting involved in this one. Push you right out front, right? Hopefully that's not the case. But make sure the superintendent or whoever that media person is, whoever that contact is, who's going to take the most calls of upset this or that or media, that they're in the know of what's going on. Do civil lawsuits happen in school bus crashes? Yeah. Before we even left the scene on the one up in my neck of the woods a year and a half ago or so, there were parents already on scene asking the superintendent who they can sue, right? So, yeah, people are just looking for this, right? So, what do we do about that? Strongly advise you, if you have a district or a school attorney, get them involved right away. File and document everything from the get-go. That means who you talked to, what date you took a phone call, what you said briefly, when files were put here, when they were sent in, when you received them. All this stuff matters, does it not, in a civil lawsuit? Right? What you said, what you filed, what you wrote down. Keep everything, right? Because the last thing you want to do is get on the stand and say, yeah, I had an entire notebook worth of notes. Man, it's exactly what I did for the day and a half that I was going through this, and I just threw that away. That's not going to look good, right? So keep it, document what you did, who you talked to, and what about. Be transparent, as honest as you can, without giving up too much information, right? And I caveat that because you don't want to give information out that you shouldn't be giving out. And you need to deal with your school or your contractor or your policy on that. I hope that makes sense. So towards the end of our slide here, Lieutenant wanted me to touch on this because we talked a lot about this in our outreaches. Mental health. Is mental health an issue today? More so than 10 years ago? More so than 30 years ago? Yeah, I have no idea. I wasn't here 30 years ago worrying about mental health issues, but I can tell when I look around today, mental health is a serious issue, right? Are we getting better at talking about this stuff? I think we are, right? Because it's becoming more prevalent. Maybe it's not more prevalent, but maybe it's, with social media and everything, it seems like we know everything about everybody now. So if somebody's having a mental health issue, somebody's probably let it out of the bag or whatever. My parents have got 2 or 3 good friends that I grew up with that I remember that they've been in for mental health, mental illness for up to 72 hours on suicide watch. These are good, phenomenal people. And guess what? Today they still are good, phenomenal people. Mental health is an illness, and I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on any of this, right? Well, Kelly said it's an illness. But it's an issue. And I'm talking to you about this because I'm not worried about you. Some of you I am worried about. But you should be worried about your drivers, right, as a whole, right? How's the morale in my department? How's the morale in my office? Again, we're not dealing with the youngest group of people here. Mental illness, I think, hits the elderly even harder, I think, maybe than the younger. I'm guessing, don't quote me on that. But you have to watch your people. And I say that, and God, I hate to keep repeating myself, but I forget that some of you haven't heard this. So I'm at one of our intelligence briefings Monday morning at work, and you guys have seen us there, right? At the Holiday gas station. Having coffee. Yeah. That's the meeting I was at. And I was talking with my good buddy who's a deputy, and he was telling me this crazy story that happened the Wednesday prior. He showed up at a house, and this guy had a shotgun to his head, and he was sitting in a car in his yard. And we laugh at this because it's what we do. But the guy said, so my buddy's, he's getting ready, he's got his gun out and stuff, and the guy's in the car with the shotgun to his head, and he's like, my buddy's like, hey, what are you doing? There's a suicide note. He can see the suicide note on the dash. And my buddy talked him down. He's like, hey, let's talk about this first, right? So we do. The guy puts the gun down. He parallels the gun away from the deputy in front of the car, but out the side door. And he goes, this thing can't even fire. He goes, deputy, he goes, Eric, he goes, this gun doesn't even work. Watch. He pulls the trigger. Boom! the gun goes off. And my buddy goes, I don't know if it scared me more or it scared him more that the gun went off, right? So that was on a Wednesday, and I said, well, what's this cat's name? And it was someone I had dealt with in the past. Anyhow, come to find out, this is a school bus driver in the area. I'm like, come again? Who? He drives bus, right? Is being suicidal mental illness or mental health scare? Yeah, absolutely it is, right? So by Monday morning, this guy did 72-hour hold, suicide watch, right? Got on some meds, called in sick Thursday and Friday with the bus garage. By Monday morning, he's behind the wheel. School district didn't even know anything happened. How would they? Right? Until they got a call from me in my intelligence meeting. Hey, so-and-so driving? Yeah, why? We need to talk, right? You need to go cut his route short and get him off, right? Okay, so that happens. This is what kind of stems some of this mental health discussions. That is a real mental health issue. You may have them. How do we know? What can we look at? Odd behavior for that person. Some of you are really weird and you have weird behaviors, right? My lieutenant tells me I'm weird all the time. But as long as I keep being Kelly Johnson kind of weird, he's okay with that, right? He understands that that's normal. Now, if I get serious and everything I say is, and I just start acting different, right? Just like your employees might, that's a mood change we have to worry about. Hygiene. Now, we didn't look these up. We didn't Google these. We didn't, ask a bunch of doctors. This is just stuff that we've kind of noticed throughout our experiences. But the hygiene gets poor, right? The suicidal gentleman with a shotgun to his head, right? He lost his electricity. He lost his water. He had been sleeping in a house without any of that for months through the winter, right? And let me tell you something really deranged and strange. About 3 months after this, after he got fired from his bus driving, the last I heard, he was in a central Minnesota town taking dumps in the flower pots downtown Main Street at night, right? So what I'm getting at is sometimes this isn't always a good ending to a story, right? You got someone who's hitting the skids over here. We might have mental illness issues. And all of a sudden, sometimes even with help, you hear this person is just going boom, 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 right? And we don't know where that's going to end. I seriously suspect that person might not even be alive today. I don't know. But it's just, what scares me is, 6 months prior to that guy's driving our kids around. That's scary. Is there a question in the back?
Yeah, so like mental health seems not as severe as the case you're talking about. Well, what if you have a driver that has mental health? Can they ever come back to driving?
Absolutely. Good question. The question is, can a driver who has a mental health breakdown or mental health issue, can they come back to driving? Yes, that's a great question. We'll do some quick follow-up on that here. Okay, so we hit on that. Do your drivers feel open? Do you have an open door policy where they can come in and talk to you about issues they're having, right? If somebody loses a loved one, whether that be a mom, dad, sibling, child, right? Are those red flags? They're showing up late, right? Hygiene, they come in unshaved anymore. I mean, the world doesn't matter to them, right? Sometimes anymore. Devastating losses for people, right? And we've had a few, I know several of you who have devastating losses, and it's not fun to talk about. But this is stuff, as you as the bosses, you have to understand that you got to kind of look at that and say, hey, so-and-so, that Kelly Johnson again, he's showing up. He lost his brother last week. They were really close. Something's going on. How can I get him in my office? If he's not going to come talk to me by himself, how can I get him in there and we can get him some help that he needs, right? You have to be open. It's a big boy world, big girl world now. You have to, as bosses, as directors, isn't that true? You have to look people in the eye and tell them the truth once in a while. That's the worst part about being a boss, right? I found that out through the military, and that's why I'm never going to apply for my lieutenant's job. Never, right? Because I'd have to deal with me. But man, that sucks. Especially if they're friends. You get to know these people, they're friends, you know their families, small towns, you know everyone, and you got to look at them and say, hey, I'm seeing issues here. We need to chat. Okay? I need you to do this. Okay? Or I might need you to do this. What do you think about it? Can you demand a mental evaluation of a driver? Absolutely. FedReg right there says you can. Why? Because part of their duties is to be able to perform physically, but also mentally, right? Can you send that driver where you want them to get tested? Yes, you have that right. If they always go to Dr. Johnson, because that's their family doctor for the last 40 years, you can say, well, you know what? Now you're going to Dr. Anderson, because that's who we use, right? Can you call Dr. Anderson and say, this is why I'm sending you Kelly Johnson? Yeah, should you? Yeah. Should you put that on Facebook then? This guy is a nut. You need to take care of this. You know what I'm saying? Watch this guy, right? We have to be very sensitive about that stuff, but it's not a HIPAA violation. That's what I was concerned with, right? If you call the doctor and say, hey, I'm sending you a guy for an evaluation. Here's what I'm seeing. Can you please check it out? It might be mental health related. Do the hard right. You're not doing the hard right for yourself, okay? I'm up here, you're here all week. We're doing the hard right because why? We want to keep our students safe. Things to consider. During the middle of a crash, it's a good time to go to your boss and say, I need a raise. Right? Are you not going to earn all of your money plus some in about the next 24 to 48 hours? And on and on. Yeah. You guys, I feel sorry for some of you when this is going on. You know, some of you look crazy. You're like, oh my God. Right? There's just a lot of stuff going on. But you have to know your own policies. That will help, right? If this happens, and this is what you can review if you have training with your staff or HR or the superintendent or whoever your big dogs are around you, if you're a big dog, you can say, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull out this little check sheet here that I made, and I highlighted it, and I'm going to go, did I do all this stuff? Okay? Trust me, that helps, okay? Because you got 15 different people pulling you in 15 different directions and wanting to know what your policy is and what to do. So cheat sheets help. Patience, it's a waiting game. We always say this in the military, so I threw it up there just because I like to do that. What do? We train for the worst and hope for the best, right? A lot of you hope for the best and don't train for crap. That's not the right answer, okay? You train for the worst case scenario. And we start off by training. We say, let's talk about a 10-50, which in my world, that's just a minor crash without injuries, right? Let's train for this. Okay? We got that one down. We got our policy set. I got a cheat sheet for minor crashes. Next month, next quarter, let's train for how we're going to deal with a crash with injuries. Okay? And you understand what I'm getting. Within a year or two, you should have little cheat sheets, or you should have a good understanding. Now remember, not just you, because you might get fired, right? Or retire, right? We got to pass this on. People above you and below you need to know some of your jobs and where to look and find stuff, right? So by the end of a year or two, when you start concentrating on this, you're trained at least as best you can for the, oh, mother of God, this just happened in my district. I've got helicopters coming, I've got ambulances coming, and this looks like Armageddon. But you know what? Here's my cheat sheet. Let's get started. Send people here, send people there, call this, call that, boom. All right? That's what it's got to be like. Boy, that's so easy to say. I can't believe you guys haven't done that. Yeah, I had to throw a plug in for us here. Okay? Attend conferences and outreaches, right? This is where we talk about this stuff. If you have any questions, follow up with us afterwards. Do you have an emergency bug-out bag? I got that one from Bemidji. That was a big one, a big lesson learned. Is there a bag that you can grab that has your coat, that has an ID, that has a radio in it, that has first aid, whatever you might need at a scene, whatever you might need at a hospital, whatever you might need at a staging area to communicate, let people know who you are, right? Is there a bag set aside where you can grab that bag and run out the door? You know, hey Sally, you grab that bag, grab bag 1, go to this ER. John, you grab that bag, you go to the crash scene, keep me informed. Me, I'm going to grab my bag and go to the main ER that most of them are coming to, right? Mechanic, you grab that bag, you go stay with that vehicle, find out where it's towed and let me know, right? That will help you, I assure you. I think that's it. Wow. Questions? Concerns? Complaints?
Kelly, I was
Oh.
going to say maybe after the crash, you have to be careful of mental health too and do a debriefing.
Yes.
But then some of the debriefing will go on.
She mentioned something about having a post-crash debriefing or some type of a meeting, right, with maybe some mental health professionals there. Law enforcement's finally coming around to that. We're getting pretty good at that. If something serious happens and you're involved, don't forget to go too as the director, even if you weren't involved, right? You can pick up a lot from these debriefings. So yeah, that's a good idea. Document that, right, as best you can. But you certainly want to do that. Couple more in the back.
Kelly, so what is the answer to the question about coming back to work after? Just having a doctor sign off that they're okay with that?
Yes. So if you, in other words, the question was, what happens when you do send somebody in for a mental health screening or something like that, and the doctor says they're good to go? Do you allow them back? The answer is, unless there's other circumstances, yes. Just like a physical injury, right? But now you as the TDs, the directors, the bosses, you also have to understand that, you know, you've got to understand that you believe that this person's good enough to drive. Does that make sense? Yes. I usually go through this every year with your drivers, but for those drivers who don't think what they do matters, right? I want to show this. This is kind of what got me into this spot, what got me into the school bus world. That happens to be my squad right there. If you look at the date, it's back in 2010. So Evan Lindquist, many of you have probably heard this story. Some of you haven't. It says here, right from the newspaper, he died after being struck by a school bus after school. Okay. This is a very sad day. It's a sad day for the driver. It's a sad day for emergency responders. It's a god-awful day for the school, and it's even worse for the parents, right? This happened right in front of Evan's house. Okay. The problem is Evan didn't get struck by a bus. Evan's head got ran over by the dualies of a bus. Okay? And I end my presentations in this because I want you to understand when you walk out of here how serious your job is. Not only your job, but your school bus driver's job, and your ability and determination to train your school bus drivers to do the right thing all the time matters. Okay? 6-year-old Evan was killed because of the actions or lack of good decisions by a school bus driver. I can tell you that putting a 6-year-old body in a body bag with a school bus next just parked down the road sucks. Right? And it really sucks for the parents of Evan who have to sit there and watch all this happen. It's horrible. Horrible. Okay? We have to do what's right for our students. That means doing the hard right sometimes. That means taking care of your drivers, making sure your drivers are doing the right thing, and going that extra mile. Every year, there's a run in Evan's namesake in Pine River, a 5K and a 2-mile run. And all this money goes to a fund that will be distributed to all of Evan's classmates when they graduate high school in Pine River in 2022. So it's kind of a good ending to a tragic, tragic story. But that's Evan's story. And this is the one that sunk into me. Every cop, and you probably are the same way, you have a story that you're like, oh man, this is the one that got me, right? This is the one that stuck with me. Well, Evan's story stuck with me. So that's why I end my presentations with it. Just to remind you that what you do matters. If you're driving a bus, if you're a director, whatever your role is, what you do matters. Lastly, thank you for what you do. I know we went a little bit over. We got late, started with some audio issues, but don't forget to thank your drivers for what they do as well, right? Thankless job. So I want to extend that thank you to you. So appreciate it. Have a great conference and look forward to seeing you around.
Kelly shared a lot of great information there. There's a lot to cover. Again, we just want to make sure we're keeping in mind that can we develop a plan and can we start so we have something to respond to and react with. Just want to do a quick review. Again, our hope is that you start doing that mental role playing, and when you get into an emergency situation, you can react and help everybody out. Got a few questions here. Some of it is related to what we covered today. Some of it is just review on things that we think you really need to know as school bus drivers in Minnesota. So how long after a serious injury crashed must you abstain from drinking alcohol? The options there are 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours, or 8 hours. And the correct answer for that one would be 8 hours. Reason being, anytime, remember the post-crash drug and alcohol testing. If there's a fatality, you will be required to provide a blood test or some sort of test for drug and alcohol. So if somebody happens to pass away 2 hours later and you went home and had a couple glasses of wine, now there's going to be alcohol in your system. So make sure you're abstaining from drinking for at least 8 hours in case they need to come back and track you down to get that blood test. How many days after moving to Minnesota do you have to change address on your driver's license? 1 year, you can do it at the time of renewal, 30 days, or 45 days. Correct answer for that one would be 30 days. Reason being, you want to make sure that's done timely, is any letters or mailings that the state sends out on behalf of driver vehicle services or anything else does not get forwarded. So if you're getting that 30-day notice that your medical card's going to expire and you need to get in and renew it, you won't receive that. Same thing if you're going to lose your driving privileges for whatever reason. If you fail to respond, you need to make sure you're getting that stuff. So it's important to make sure you get in and get that updated. And when you get your new cards, review them, check them to make sure that they're accurate, that all the restrictions and endorsements are on there properly. Can the carrier or district send a driver in for a new medical exam following a physical or mental injury? We covered that one pretty well in the presentation today, and the correct answer would be yes. When is a post-crash inspection required? So in any crash involving a school bus, only if there's a fatality, injuries treated immediately away from the scene, and any vehicle is towed, or D, only fatals or injuries. Remember Kelly's little slogan there, a hook, hearse, or a nurse. That is when the State Patrol needs to come and physically inspect or issue a waiver for an inspection for any school bus before it can be used to transport students again. If you're involved in a crash, you should only discuss it with law enforcement, your supervisor, and the school district. True or false? And that one would be true. Obviously, if you're talking to an attorney or something, that would fall in there too. But we do not recommend you go around talking to witnesses or other people involved in a crash or the public about what happened. You don't want to release information that should not be released. So you as a school bus driver are acting in good faith and providing medical care following a crash. Would you be protected from civil liability? The Good Samaritan clause, remember, true, as long as you're acting reasonably and what any other good person would do in that situation. You would be covered. What is the first thing you should do following a crash? Remain calm and assess the situation, evacuate and panic, or evacuate or panic and scream. And the correct answer for that one obviously would be remain calm and assess the situation. That way you know what you need, what help you can get, and then notify 911, call for assistance, so you have all the information you need to get the best help there as quickly as possible. Kelly shared a very impactful story on what drew him into the School Bus Safety Office of Pupil Transportation. Let me assure you that each of us in the Office of Pupil Transportation shares that same passion for student and school bus safety. We hope that you continue to do your jobs the best you can and wish you a safe and successful school year transporting our students. I will put my contact information back up on the screen again. My email address is there at the bottom. Any questions from the presentation today or anything else, feel free to contact us. Thanks again for your time.